Morning, everyone. My name is Cheryl. I'm one of the key relationship managers at the Practical Vision Network. Thank you so much for joining our joint webinar this morning with Searches UK. As an introduction then, an agenda to what we're doing. So I'm going to do a brief introduction to the Practical Vision Network, who we are and what we do in the legal sector. We're going to take a look at the types of organisations that are at risk of fraud and cybercrime. What are these risks? So what do we need to be looking out for, in particular at the moment, because now that we're all working from home, we need to be working on high alert. What do the regulators say in relation to those risks, in particular in relation to your fund transfers, and how Searches UK and Lawyerchecker can support you to mitigate those risks? We're going to take a look at some of the technical tools that you can use to help raise the bar in relation to your cybersecurity, as well as the importance of having the correct cyber culture in your firm. And then I'm going to share with you some cybersecurity top tips that you can kind of take away today and start doing right away that will really help you raise the bar in relation to your security. And then to the Practical Vision Network. The Practical Vision Network is a group of companies that works with law firms and legal organisations to do two things. So the first is to protect you from fraud and cybercrime, and the second is to promote you in the market. So on the promotion side of our business, we have Solve Legal Marketing. Solve is a full-service marketing agency dedicated to the legal sector, and they do absolutely everything from website design to social media management to content writing, effectively anything that you would need to really market yourself in the sector. We then have the Move Exchange. The Move Exchange is effectively an outsourced new business team for conveyancing departments and for private client departments. And effectively what they do is they'll handle all of your inbound inquiries. They'll speak to your clients and quote them on the phone. They'll then convert that quote and hand it back to you as paying work. And then we also have 4 online news publications: Today's Conveyancer, Today's Legal Cyber Risk, Today's Wills and Probate, and Today's Family Lawyer. If you're not already subscribed to these, please do subscribe. Subscription is free, and they are really, really fantastic tools for making sure that you stay up to date with what's going on in your sector, particularly at the moment where developments are happening so quickly. These are really, really useful to make sure that you are on top of any of the changes that are occurring. But of course, today we're here to talk about Lawyerchecker. Lawyerchecker was set up in 2013 with the aim of reducing the risk of conveyancing fraud and cybercrime to law firms. So effectively, fraudsters have identified a loophole in the conveyancing transaction, which they can use to infiltrate your business to redirect client funds. And Lawyerchecker aims to kind of plug up those gaps to help mitigate that risk, to stop these breaches from occurring. So what do I mean then when I am talking about fraud and cybercrime? So fraud is when trickery is used to gain a dishonest advantage, which is often financial, over another person. And cybercrime is any criminal act dealing with computers and networks, which is often referred to as hacking, and additionally cybercrime, which is conducted through the internet. So when talking about fraudsters, what I want to be clear is that I'm not referring to the stereotype fraudster which you might have, that you might be thinking about. So this isn't just somebody who is sat in a dark room on his laptop trying to hack your transactions. What I'm referring to is full-blown organizations. They work out of airplane hangars. They do shift work, they get paid leave, they get holidays. They are similar to you and me in that they have a full-time job, and this is their full-time job, to hack any organization to get access to personal data. And it really doesn't matter who you are or what you do. It doesn't matter if you're a large law firm or a small law firm, or you're a big organization such as British Airways as an example, who were famously intercepted for 2 weeks in the summer of 2018, where 280,000 sets of bank details were lost. There's some big names here on the screen: Microsoft, T-Mobile. These have all been subject to cybercrime attacks. And even our own business. So Lawyerchecker is are experts in cybersecurity for law firms. We have incredibly high standards when it comes to cybersecurity, but we even get attempts. It really doesn't matter to them who you are or what you do. So it's important that when I'm referring to fraudsters, that we accept that we are all at risk, all of our organizations are at risk, and that we're taking the correct steps and putting in place the correct measures to help mitigate that risk. Now, particular law firms, of course, are at very high risk, and this is due to the nature of the work that you do and the kind of personal information that you hold. So 60% of law firms reported a cybersecurity incident in 2018. That is an incredibly high number. We suspect that that is even higher now. You know, in just 2 months towards the end of 2019, 44 scam alerts were raised. So there are a huge amount of bogus law firms out there. It's important that this risk is at the forefront of your mind when you're dealing with any law firm or when you're dealing with a consumer, that you do review the full situation, all of the circumstances before you act on any communication. There are a broad range of methods used by fraudsters to infiltrate organizations, and I'm confident that all of you will have at least come across one of these attempts. But broadly, some of the definitions are as follows. So the first one then is a phishing email. This is a very, very, very common method used by fraudsters. And effectively what it is it's where a fraudster will contact you by email, and within that email, there will be an instruction to do something such as click on a link. Now, quite often, these emails are coming from legitimate organizations. So you can see from my two examples here on the screen, I've got an email from Office 365 as well as Amazon, and both of these emails look very legitimate. And as you can imagine, on a busy afternoon when you're quite stressed and you've got loads of inbound emails, it's very important. It would be very easy for you to make a mistake and click on that link. If we just look at the email then on the left-hand side from Office 365, to be able to identify that this is a fraudulent email, you would need to look at the domain address that the email is coming from. So you can see from the Office 365 email, the domain is @lausd.net. It's very clear that that domain doesn't relate to Office 365 and therefore it's fraudulent. And if I did go ahead and click on that Verify Now link, that would cause the fraudster to breach our organization and get access to personal information. And I'm sure that you can appreciate that the consequences of that kind of breach would be absolutely devastating. So the key message here is that when you are receiving any emails that are coming from an external source, please do make sure that you're reviewing the domain address before you act on it. Moving on from that, then we have vishing. Vishing is the telephone equivalent of phishing, and it's described as the act of using the telephone effectively to scam you. Now, whilst you're probably sat there thinking that that is quite unrealistic and that you would know the voice of your client, this does actually occur. A couple of months ago, I was presenting down in London where a managing director of a law firm came up to me and said that this had occurred to him and that the person on the other end of the phone was directing him to log into a false NatWest platform. Now, luckily, he didn't go ahead with that, but it is clear and it does demonstrate that it does happen and that you do need to have your wits about you. And particularly at the moment when we're all working remotely and we're relying quite heavily on telephone calls and emails and that kind of thing, you need to be on high alert, particularly if you're speaking to someone who is asking you to do something that's rather suspicious or urgent. Just make sure that you have that in the forefront of your mind and that you're reviewing the entire circumstances before you act on anything. And I think at the moment as well, we're all in a little bit more danger of this, given that a number of firms will have furloughed staff. So I'm sure that some of us are now picking up case files that we're not familiar with, dealing with clients that we're not familiar with. So make sure that you are reviewing all of the circumstances before you take any actions. Moving forward, then we have smishing, which is the text version of phishing, and then we've got push payment fraud. This is where the scammer convinces you to make a same-day payment via instant payment. So the next method I'd like to look at then is CEO whaling. So CEO whaling is where the fraudster identifies a senior member of staff in your organization and then contacts another member of staff asking them to do something urgent, such as a same-day payment. So you can see from my example here that the fraudster has identified our CEO, Chris Harris, and they've used Chris's name to get in contact with another member of staff asking them for a same-day payment. So the way that we know that this email is fraudulent is again by looking at that domain address. So you can see here for Chris Harris, it's at soho.eu. Now I know that that in no way relates to our organization, and it certainly doesn't relate to Chris Harris. And just the actual instruction within the email, you know, it's urgent, it's suspicious. It just says that even emails that you're getting internally that appear to be coming from internal staff, just make sure again that you're checking that email, that domain address before you action anything. Now, whilst phishing emails are very, very common, what most people don't realize is that actually it's far easier for a fraudster to clone your exact email address and use that to contact your clients. Now, fraudsters are really, really clever. They will sit in the back of your emails for weeks at a time, watch who you're speaking to, what kind of language you're using, and then eventually they'll use your email address to contact your client. Typically, they'll be asking for an urgent payment. And what's scary about this is that this email will never sit in your sent box, so you'll never see it go out. You won't know that your client has been contacted. And often the only time that you'll become aware of this is once the client has made payment and got back in touch with you. So they are really, really clever. This does happen, and there are things out there that can stop this kind of email cloning, which I'll talk about later on. Is a term I'm sure we have all heard about. What it's referring to is communication being intercepted either between two law firms or between a law firm and a client. And what the fraudster is trying to do here is just to intercept that communication, to change those bank account details so that the client's funds are redirected to their bank. Once it hits the fraudulent bank account, that money is then dispersed even further and ultimately it is lost. Now, more recently in the news, we've seen that 96% of fraud, of victims of fraud are not refunded by banks. So you really need to think about where the liability is going to sit if client money is lost, and make sure that you're putting the correct measures in place to stop that kind of breach from occurring. Now, this typically obviously happens on a Friday afternoon when you're at your busiest, trying to get your completions done. Fraudsters are well aware that you're busy, and it's where you're most likely going to make mistakes. So having a clear and consistent process in place for verifying bank details is very important. Regulators are well aware, they're really upping the ante in relation to what you should be doing in terms of protecting your client and protecting your firm. So both Lexel and the Conveyancing Quality Scheme have set out standards that are required for you to mitigate these risks. In particular, the Conveyancing Quality Scheme states that you must have a procedure for the secure transmission of the practice bank's information to clients and receipt of banking information from clients. You must have a procedure in place for verifying the banking details of other conveyancers and third parties to whom money is sent. And you must have a procedure for communication with the practice bankers. Now, this is where Lawyerchecker and Searches UK can really support you to meet these standards. Ultimately, Lawyerchecker exists to help you remain compliant, but also to protect your firm and to protect your client and their funds. So the first search then that is available to you via Searches UK is the Account and Entity Screen. Effectively, an account and entity screen is a law firm to law firm bank account verification service which works based on track record. So effectively, you will submit bank account details, and what we are going to tell you is whether or not those bank account details have a good track record in conveyancing and whether or not we believe those bank account details relate to that firm. So there are three types of results that you can get back from an account and entity screen. The first is frequent. This should act as a green flag for you. We've seen those bank account details many times before. Lots of firms have carried out searches against those bank account details, and they have a good track record in conveyancing, and therefore we believe it relates to the firm. So that would be an instant result, which you get as a PDF, which you can then save on your case file as evidence that you have verified bank account details. The second type of result is an infrequent. So this means that we have seen the bank account details before, but we haven't seen them very often. And the final result is an unknown result. So if you were to get an infrequent or an unknown result from your account and entity screen search, we believe that you require further information in relation to that law firm before you send money over to them. So we have an in-house operational team who will automatically for you so that you have that information to make an informed decision about whether you're going to continue with the transaction. And what they do is they build up content-rich reports on the firm for you. They look into over 12 different databases to gather that information. So some of the things that we're looking at is whether that particular firm is SRA or CLC. Are they Cyber Essentials certified? Even something really simple as Google search and Street View. So can we see that it's a genuine entity? Do they have an office or a sign that is viewable from the street? We have a direct API into the SRA. So if there are any scam alerts, conditions or notices on that law firm that we think you should know about prior to sending money to them, we will let you know about it. And more topical at the moment, given the current state in the market, we also carry out insolvency checks. So any changes to a firm's status on Companies House, you will be notified about via the account and entity screen. So again, it's that additional layer of protection to make sure that you've got all the information possible about the firm before you send money to them. Now, our SLA on the account and entity screen further research is 4 hours. We have never taken that long. It usually averages about an hour and a half, but we highly recommend that if you do get an infrequent or an unknown result, that you wait for that further information to come back before you continue with the transaction. And of course, once you've got your further research back, that again is a second PDF that you can put into your case file that says this is the information that you based your decision on. So when the SRA in a few years comes down and picks out your file, this is the evidence that you can show them, the evidence that you can show them in relation to what you did around verifying those bank account details and that firm before continuing the transaction. And as you can see, that content-rich report also really goes towards meeting the standards of the CQS in relation to carrying out relevant checks on the law firm itself before you send money to them. Now, we highly recommend that account and entity screen is used in every single transaction. Consistency in process leads to higher security. No gaps are left for fraudsters to infiltrate to redirect those funds. And having a clear process in place, such as using account and entity screen in every single transaction, looks good to your insurer, it looks good to your regulators, and it's very, very easy to put in place. So the cost of account and entity screen is £12 plus VAT. We highly recommend that you recharge that to your client. So effectively, this service should be cost neutral to you. It's a win-win for both you, the firm, and for your client, given that your client money is protected. And this is a service that really helps you carry out enhanced due diligence checks, and it's cost neutral to you. So we've spoken about law firm to law firm communication and how that can be intercepted. But you can also have communication intercepted between law firm and client. And this is where Consumer Bank Account Checker fits in. So we're partnered with Experian to provide the Consumer Bank Account Checker. And effectively, it's a personal bank account verification service which you can use to verify the bank account details of your client before you remit money to them. So typically this is used in conveyancing, but it can also be used in private clients such as estate administration or any department in your firm where money is going back to a consumer. Now, this is particularly useful at the moment, given that we're not seeing our clients in person, and actually verifying your client's bank account details is a lot more difficult doing it remotely. But Consumer Bank Account Checker is a really effective tools so that you can be sure that you're dealing with the correct client. And as I was saying earlier, and particularly where you've picked up a case file that you're not familiar with, or you're dealing with a client that you're not familiar with, Consumer Bank Account Checker can really support you to make sure that you're sending the money to the right place before you send it out. So as you can see on the right-hand side here, the result for Consumer Bank Account Checker is an instant result. The result is formed of 4 tiers. So at the very top, what we're looking at here is whether or not the bank account is an active and live bank account within the UK. So it's important to note that Consumer Bank Account Checker can only be used to verify UK bank accounts. The second tier is account ownership, so whether or not that particular account is a single or a joint account. We then have a score out of 9 based on personal details. So what we're looking at here is the name and date of birth associated with the bank account. For me, this is the most important part of this result. If you were to get a score 1 out of 9 based on name and date of birth, that would be a critical red flag. Something's wrong there and you might need to escalate that. And again, we've got a score out of 9 based on address details. So again, a low score based on address details would be a critical red flag, and you'd need to carry out further investigations as to why that has come back prior to you sending money. But again, the benefit of the Consumer Bank Account Checker is that you have got the PDF evidence on your case file that you can refer back to if you're ever asked, that shows how you verified those bank account details before you sent money back to a client. So the cost of Consumer Bank Account Checker is £2.50 plus VAT. Again, we recommend that you recharge that back out to the client, and this should be cost neutral to you. So just going back then to what the regulators were saying in relation to what you should be doing to mitigate the risk, Lawyerchecker exists to help you meet these standards. So both the account and entity screen and the Consumer Bank Account Checker ensures that you've really got a clear procedure in place in relation to verifying bank account details before you're sending money out to them. They're both cost neutral services in that you can recharge them, and they're very easy to get implemented, and I'm sure that Searches UK would be more than happy to talk you through that process. So we've spoken about some of the technical things that you can put in place in relation to mitigating the risk of fund transfers. What I'd like to look at now is some of the other technical things that you can do and put in place to help you raise the bar in relation to your cybersecurity, but also the importance of having the correct cyber culture in a firm. Given that we are only as strong as our weakest link, it's important that all of your staff are up to date in terms of what the risks are and how to mitigate them. Talking about account and entity screen and Consumer Bank Account Checker, another really useful tool to make sure that you're setting the correct standards in relation to your IT is the Cyber Essentials certificate. So Cyber Essentials is a government-backed scheme which is recommended as being the base level of cybersecurity for law firms. Both the Conveyancing Quality Scheme and Lexcel have mentioned Cyber Essentials as being something that you should have. And it really does focus on 5 key areas for your cybersecurity. So, is your internet connection secure? Are your devices and software secure? Are your devices and software up to date? Who has access to your data? And are you protected from viruses and malware? Now, over the last couple of weeks, we've seen the largest ever migration of office workers to remote working that the UK has ever seen. And as part of that large move, mistakes will have occurred, gaps will have been left in networks, and the fraudsters will be looking to identify those gaps to infiltrate your organization. So Cyber Essentials is a really useful tool for you to do to check that you've not left any gaps. Now, Cyber Essentials is self-certifying. You complete an online questionnaire, which is then marked by an assessor. And once you've passed your Cyber Essentials, you can then use the Cyber Essentials branding. You can put it on your website, you can put it on your email footer, and it will that branding will really demonstrate not only to your clients, but also to law firms and organizations that you're dealing with, and to fraudsters that you are super serious about your cybersecurity. if I was a fraudster and I went onto your website and I saw that you have the Cyber Essentials branding on there, I know you're serious about your security. I'm just going to move on to the next firm who haven't taken these measures and these steps. Cybersecurity and cyber certifications is a journey. It doesn't really matter where in this journey that you start. I suppose it depends how serious you are about your security. So we've spoken about Cyber Essentials, that it's a self-certifying certificate. You may want to look into doing Cyber Essentials Plus. Cyber Essentials Plus is a verified version of Cyber Essentials in that it is verified by a third party. So your Cyber Essentials assessor will run a vulnerability scan on your network to make sure that no gaps have been left. And if gaps have been left, they'll then work with you to patch those gaps up. This is particularly useful, the Cyber Essentials Plus certificate, in auditing what your IT team are doing or what your outsourced IT are doing to make sure that they're doing everything that they should be in relation to having correct cybersecurity in your firm. Another certificate available is the IASME Gold certificate. So this is effectively a Cyber Essentials certificate plus a GDPR assessment. It's a very well-rounded certificate that you may want to look into getting. It's quite a popular choice. And then if you're really, really serious about your cybersecurity, you can look to doing ISO 27001. This is an internationally recognized standard for cybersecurity. So if you're really serious doing that, that is the goal, that's where you want to be. But as I say, it really doesn't matter where you start on this journey, as long as you are taking the correct steps and meeting the right standards in relation to your IT and your security. So we've seen earlier on just how inherently emails are insecure, and we've spoken a little bit about email cloning and how fraudsters can use your exact email address to contact your clients. Now, we do offer a service called On DMARC. Again, this is a government-backed scheme which protects your exact email address from being used to contact your clients by blocking any emails which aren't coming from a trusted source. So, for example, your own laptop would be a trusted source. Given that I'm not in your organization, mine wouldn't be, as an example. So this stops your email address being used. I'm sure you understand that the consequences of your own email address being used is devastating. When you set up a firm and you purchase a domain, it is your responsibility to protect that domain. And this service, having something like On DMARC in place, can really help you sleep better at night, knowing that your name and your email address is not going to be used for any fraudulent activity. But having all of these kind of tools in place is absolutely excellent. But as I say, we're only as strong as our weakest link. So having the correct cyber culture in your firm is just as important. Now, staff are the biggest threat to any business, given that they are the ones that are on the phones, they're the ones that are dealing with any emails, and they're the people that are going to be making the mistakes. So it doesn't matter if you're working at reception, if you're a fee earner, it really doesn't matter. Everybody needs to be aware of what the risks are and how to mitigate them. So having regular staff training is really important. Lawyerchecker can support you to carry out phishing emails to your staff, which is where, we'll send a phishing email out and we'll report back to you on who clicked on the links, that then you can offer them further training. And there's lots and lots of webinars out there that you can be a part of to kind of stay up to date in terms of what's happening, such as webinars like this. Make sure that you are kind of keeping up to date, reading all of the latest news articles on today's legal cyber risk, and just making sure that you're carrying out as many steps as you can to mitigate any risk to your business. So to finish off today, I just thought I would share some cybersecurity top tips that you can kind of put in place straight away to help you raise the bar in relation to your security. So the first is do not connect to open Wi-Fi networks. This is going to be more relevant when we're out of our lockdown and working out and about. Open Wi-Fi networks, sitting in a coffee shop, things like that, they are incredibly insecure. They can be used to hack your devices. Always hotspot your mobile to your laptop rather than connecting to a Wi-Fi network that you're not familiar with. In terms of your passwords then, do not use the same password for your login details. That is for business accounts, but also personal accounts. So never use personal passwords For business, I'll show you in a moment the importance of having really strong passwords, because fraudsters have algorithms that they use to crack passwords. So it's important that we make sure all of our passwords are different, and that you're updating them regularly. Third is be conscious of conversations that you are having in public places. So be careful not to share private and confidential information. Again, this is going to be more relevant when we're out of lockdown, but when we're sitting on trains or anything like that, and we're having conversations with our colleagues, please just be mindful of what information you are sharing out loud. You know, fraudsters could be anywhere. We don't know who they are. We don't know what they look like. So just make sure that any information that you're sharing, you're doing so in a private room. And then be cautious and trust your instinct. So if something doesn't seem right, stop what you're doing and review the situation entirely. As I say, you know, if you're receiving emails that appear to be coming from a colleague, but they're asking you to do something suspicious, something urgent, same-day payment, anything like that, or if you're speaking to somebody on the phone and they're asking you to do something that you just don't feel comfortable with and it doesn't seem right, just stop what you're doing and just review the entire situation before you do make any actions. This graph is quite interesting, really, in terms of the importance of having strong passwords. So as I said, fraudsters have algorithms that they use to crack your passwords. And the longer your password is and the more characters you use, capital letters, special characters, that kind of thing, the longer it's going to take them to crack the password. So it is incredibly important that your passwords are strong and that you are updating them regularly. But that's all from me today. Thank you so much for listening this morning. If you'd like any further information in relation to account and entity screen or consumer bank account checker, the bank account verification services, please do get in touch with Searches UK. They will love to speak to you and talk to you about how the services work and how you can get them implemented into your firm. My contact details are also up there, so if you have any questions in relation to anything else, please do get in touch. I'd be more than happy to speak with you. But again, thank you so much for listening this morning. I hope you all have a great day.